You know, if I was a psychic, I might know how to read this. I put these cards down. They're like a gilded tarot deck, and this is the Celtic cross spread that I did here. You can see that. I shuffled the cards, I put them in the right position, but of course, I don't know how to read them because I'm not a psychic. And I've seen many psychics do this many times. They obviously know how to read them based on the meaning of the cards, but does it really mean anything? I don't know. So here's the deck of tarot cards, which again, do not know how to read. In drawing the first card, I get the Ten of Pentacles. No idea what that means. I did actually try to learn this at one point in my life, but I knew how to read like a regular deck of cards. I actually got a book and learned how to interpret the different cards in a regular deck, but I have never learned how to do tarot. Anyway, doesn't matter. Not a psychic. The topic today is, are psychics real? Are they for real? If you go to a psychic, can you be assured that they know what they're talking about? Well, it's not an easy yes or no answer for me. I can tell you that through a lot of my life, I have gone to see psychics periodically out of curiosity because I was always pursuing kind of a spiritual path, and I would have liked to have believed that people would know not only the past about people, but maybe your future. It's a nice thought. You know, I'd heard and read about the Akashic Records and wanted to believe that that exists. And I'm saying this in such a way to you right now because I am still somewhat of a skeptic. Now, I say that knowing, in fact, that my family, we have intuitive gifts. Now, I wouldn't say we're psychic. My mother was intuitive. My grandfather was intuitive, her father. And I have intuitive gifts. I'm not going to share with you today what those are, but I would never think of calling myself or passing myself off as a psychic. The intuition I have is not, to me, broad ranging enough to be able to label myself a psychic. Do most people have intuition? Yes, I believe that they do. I think most people are intuitive, and especially if they explore that part of their soul or psyche, I think that, you know, a lot of people have a potential gift. But going back to the initial question, are psychics real? Well, I would say many of them are not. Okay. I've actually watched some programs on YouTube and people talking about this, and they'll say, oh, there's no way that psychics exist. It's all a hoax. It's like they're just, you know, preying on your own wishes and fears or whatever. I don't go that far. And the reason why is I'm going to tell you today a couple of people, couple of psychics that I meant that I really do think were for real. So, what I would say is most people who kind of put themselves out there as psychics, I don't necessarily believe are psychics. I think they might be intuitives, like myself, and they might have some abilities, but not to the point that they could really, really tell someone else um, a lot of what that person might want to know, let's say. So, I'll tell you a couple of the times that I did meet someone who I really believed was psychic. And therefore, I can't say unequivocally that psychics don't exist. I do think they exist. I think they're just pretty rare. I think to find someone with real gifts, real abilities. Now, for purposes of this video, I'm going to separate the idea of psychics out from mediums. There are other people with other types of intuitive gifts and abilities that are not what I would call psychics per se, like mediums, for instance. I have met a couple of mediums who I also think were for real. Well, the couple of psychics that I met in my life that I think were for real, both were from relatively long ago. One was in my late 20s and one was in my early 30s. The one that I met in my late 20s was in Vancouver, British Columbia. I had gone up there with a friend and to spend a couple of days, and we had heard about this psychic, and so I had made an appointment to go see her. And she was an older woman at the time, so I'm sure she's already, you know, no longer with us, shall we say. And we went to her house to have a reading, And when I walked into the room, she had a round table with a tablecloth on it, and she had a crystal ball on it, really large crystal ball. And I had, of course, heard about crystal balls. I had never seen anyone actually use it. And what she did really kind of surprised me. She gave me the crystal and had me hold it for a few minutes. And then she took it back from me. And apparently, what happens, the theory behind this, is the crystal can amplify your energy and, whatever's going on with you, and then she can read it more easily. I had never seen anyone use this before. I have never seen anyone use it since that time in that exact way. So it was very interesting. But the thing that blew me away from minute one with her is she gave me the ball, she took it back, and then she said to me, I see that your father died in a ball of fire. Now, my father died in a helicopter crash when I was 10 years old. And he was stationed over in South Korea at the time. And it was a very, it was an accident. It was not in wartime or anything like that. But the fact that she saw that how he died, and then she went into more detail and said he didn't die in the crash, he died afterwards. And she said he had burns over most of his body. Well, that's exactly what happened. Now, there's no way this woman could have known that. I had never met her before. I didn't know anyone that knew her. How did she see how my father had died? It was so amazing to me. And then the rest of the reading, she actually probably got about 3/4 of what she said correct, and it was very specific. Like, she told me things about my son and my marriage, and I did not tell her anything about myself. So that person, I really believe, was a psychic. I don't understand her gift. I don't understand why she was, why she had what she had, but I really believe she was for real. And my friend that went with me also had a reading that same day, and it blew her away too. So I really think that woman was legitimate. Now, the next person that I believe was a legitimate psychic was a few years later, and it was in Washington, D.C. I had gone back there to stay with my mother when my grandmother passed away, and we were there to go to the funeral of my grandmother, who was buried with my grandfather at Arlington National Cemetery. And the day after the funeral, we went to this psychic that my mother had gone to a few times, but I don't think she'd seen him for about a year before this. And she had gone to see him before, and she had always been really impressed with him. And she said, "You've got to see this guy." And he was an old man, very elderly, and he was effectively blind. He was blind. He, I think, could see light and dark and shades and stuff, but he really couldn't see very well. And what's amazing is he used tarot cards. He would lay out the tarot cards without being able to see them, and he could just tell you what they were saying. And the thing that blew me away about him was that, again, my mother had not even been to see him in a while, and I obviously don't think she had ever said anything about me. And a couple of the factors that came up at that time was that he said to me, "I see you just went to a funeral for your grandmother." Now, there's no way he could have known that. My mother was not friends with him. She had not chatted with him. They didn't have friends in common, anything like that. The fact that he knew it was my grandmother and that we had just had the funeral, like the day before, was just blew me away. Then he proceeded to tell me things again about my own, that at the time my marriage was breaking up and I was in kind of a new or getting into a new relationship. And he was able to tell me about that. And he was able to tell me things about my son when he didn't even know, how, if I had a child or not or whatever. I didn't tell him anything. Almost everything he said that day was spot on. And it wasn't this vague stuff that you get at psychics. You go to a psychic and they go, "I see you're going through a difficult time right now. And there's a lot of challenges in your life. And I see that you've got some conflict with people in your life that are really close to you. But I see that that's going to improve in the next couple of months. It's going to get better. Okay, that's the kind of thing you get at a lot of psychics. They don't give you a lot of specifics. They might tell you, oh, you're having problems with your finances or you're having problems with your job. And see, those things might apply to most people. But the thing that's so interesting is that those two people I went to were very specific. And I can't discount that they had an ability. They had some ability, whether they could tap into the Akashic records or some other thing, I don't know, but they were for real. So, because of that, I can't be a total skeptic about psychics. However, I am cautiously skeptical because I would say 95% of the psychics I have ever gone to have been not that great. In fact, I've often gone to psychics where I've thought to myself, I could do that reading for someone. I could do the exact same thing, and I'm not a psychic. Now, there is one other psychic. I'm going to make another brief mention. There was one other psychic I went to. Again, this was back in my 20s, who kind of blew me away because, and I'll go into this more in future videos on my channel because it's kind of a complex topic. It's a weird one. But this one day I was going to see this psychic, and I was living in Seattle at the time. And as I was driving there, all of a sudden, you know how a thought will pop into your head and you think, oh, what's that? Well, all of a sudden I was driving along and I was by myself that day, and the thought popped into my head, Joan of Arc. Now, I don't know why I was thinking of Joan of Arc all of a sudden. I hadn't seen anything with Joan of Arc. This was way before the days of the internet or anything like that. I have no idea why that popped into my head, and I thought it was a little strange. And so I kind of put it out of my mind. And about 10 minutes later, I arrived to this lady's house and I walk in. And the first thing she says to me when we sat for the reading, she took my hand and she goes, "You were with Joan of Arc." I just about fell off my chair. And I mean, it was me kind of having an intuition probably ahead of time that that's what she was going to say. But there's a whole other backstory to that, which I will save for a whole other video, because there is a strange, weird connection with my energy or something and Joan of Arc. Not that I ever was Joan of Arc, but I mean, there's some evidence to believe that I did know Joan of Arc. So she proceeded to tell me some things about that lifetime when I apparently was, Anyway, I have to say that was very unusual. I don't know if she was completely for real as a psychic. Maybe I was just picking up ahead of time on what she was going to say. But I already knew there was some weird connection with me and Joan of Arc before I went in there that day. I had known that since I was in college. And so it was strange that she said it, because no one had ever said something like that before. So that's another strange incident which I cannot explain. So again, do I think psychics are real? Most of them probably not. Most of them I would say are probably intuitives that have learned how to basically work with people. Maybe they've learned how to do tarot cards, and so they know kind of what to say to people to kind of get them to believe in them or trust them or whatever. I don't think badly of them for that. I mean, maybe I do if they're charging tons of money for that, but if you're a psychic and you're watching this, please comment below. I would love to hear about you, because maybe you're for real. And since I'm completely open-minded that there are psychics that are the real deal, I would be happy to hear about your abilities. Anyway, that's my take on it. I'm sure I will touch on this type of topic in other videos. It remains a really big interest of mine. I mean, I've known people based on things I've told them that have said to me, "Oh, you ought to do readings because I think you're a psychic." And I go, "No, I'm not. I think I'd be psychic enough to know if I was psychic." And I'm not. So I know I'm having a weird sense of humor about this. But anyway, that's the topic for today. I'm on the fence about it. I know there's been some real ones. I've met them. I've had readings from them. I reserve judgment about the majority of people that purport to be psychics. And again, until next time, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Please drop a like below and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you next time. Take care.